Good afternoon, and welcome to this week's episode of Safety Culture Solutions, sponsored by Safety Culture Strategies. This week's going to be a little different. I'm going to have a lot of different featured guests. We're very thrilled to have them in studio. This week, we're going to be providing an executive synopsis, and we're going to be addressing the Deepwater Horizon drilling platform disaster from a safety culture perspective. Now, I got to be candid. A lot of people look at me and go, Mike, why do we care? That happened so long ago. It's 2010. Everything's changed. Well, my goal was by the time we get done, I think candidly, you may realize there's a lot that can be learned from this, and it's still applicable to what's going on in today's work environments. See if we can toggle down. And obviously, you want to start with a little bit of history. In this case, for British Petroleum, or BP as they go by. Well, in March of 2005, at the Texas City refinery, they had an explosion. They killed 15 people. In March of 2006, more than 267 million thousands of gallons of oil were released into Prudhoe Bay. In October of 2009, OSHA issued an $87 million fine to BP. That is not a typo. $87 million, the largest fine in history, 270 notifications of failure to abate, and 439 willful violations. Now, as a safety practitioner, when I hear that volume of notifications of failure to abate, that means you were kind of aware of it and just, well, we didn't do what we could have. And then when you have that many willful violations, in legal speak, that kind of goes in, you knew about it, and you just, well, we're going to go ahead and keep doing it that way. So you can understand why a fine was $87 million. And previous fine, by the way, this is the largest one. And the previous largest fine by OSHA was in calendar year 2005 for $21 million, and it also was with BP. So we'd like to say, do we see a trend here? In March of 2010, OSHA fines the Toledo refinery $3 million. Now, compared to where they were, a couple of years ago, I guess it's a little better. October of 2010, back at the Texas City refinery now, they managed to really trip up on the Clean Air Act violation to the tune of $12 million. In July of 2012, they agreed to additional $13 million in penalties to resolve additional violations at the Texas City refinery. And these fines do not include a series of other environmental actions dating back to the 1990s, and that's to the tune of $178 million. This is big bucks. Not sure where everybody grows up, but that'd be kind of tricky to try to write out of my paycheck. I want to talk a little bit about the platform itself. From an engineering perspective, this is truly a modern marvel. And you can see it on the left-hand side, you notice it's straddling a ship. That's actually how they're able to transport them out to the ocean. They build them in the big docks, they float it out there, and then this ship goes underneath, rises just enough, picks up, in this case, the drilling platform, and then takes it out to sea, in this case, the Gulf of New Mexico, to where they're going to do all the drilling. And I call your attention to the right-hand photo. You notice kind of the lower left, it's kind of an octagonal shape with a big H on it. Well, that's where the helicopter would land when they'd bring out the VIPs or spatial research people, etc. So slides later on, it kind of helps, at least give me resonates on just all the changes that could happen so quickly. The Deepwater Horizon itself was built in 2001. It's owned by Transocean Limited, and it's operated again by British Petroleum, or BP. Here's a few numbers for all the designers out there, the people who really get into this. $350 million to design, build, $1 million a day to operate. I'll repeat, $1 million a day just to operate. The drilling package, all the headgear that rotates the drill stems that go way down in the ocean, 28,000 tons. And that's a whole pile, as my granddad would like to say. Heaviest lift by any shipyard at that time during fabrication. Now, this is what really made Deepwater Horizon unique, is the capability to drill to depths in excess of 10 8,000 feet, way down there. It gives you more flexibility. They had accommodations for 160 people, and I tell you, when I would talk to people who've been involved in this, we're actually out on the platform, it's literally like a very nice floating hotel. Each berth, or your little bed, if you had internet, you had satellite TV, you had a movie theater, a gymnasium, and maid service. Sometimes when I'm on the road, I don't get this level of luxury at a hotel that's not out in the middle of the ocean. The timeline, as we're leading up to what happened in April, right at the end of January 31st, Deepwater arrived at the drilling site. On February 6th, they began drilling. In the first quarter of 2010, stakeholders couldn't be more happy. The drilling platform, all the production facilities were at full capacity. The stocks and the dividends are on the rise. Excuse me. They had reduced worker injuries. So if you're an investor, if you're a stockholder, you are one happy camper with these guys. Everything couldn't be going better. On the day of the event, senior management flew out to the drilling platform, and they included the vice president of drilling operations, and they had a series of awards, including recognizing 7 years without a lost time injury. They also talked about how they use handrails to go up and down the stairs. They had lids on their coffee cups to make sure they didn't inadvertently get a burn, and they made sure anytime they're out driving the vehicles before they would fly out to the platform that no one could be using a cell phone. So they had some items they were looking at. Candidly, I think we're going to learn that they weren't focused on the ones they could have. On April 20th, 2010, 21:50 hours, Deepwater Horizon exploded. It was a catastrophic rig explosion. 11 people lost their lives. You've heard of one of my earlier broadcasts. I had Mr. Roy Bridges with us, and he was big time in the Air Force, and he had the pleasure of flying one of the shuttles. And we talked to him. He says, "Can I talk about how I lost 14 people?" And it affects him to this day. We lost 11 people in this disaster. 17 people were injured. The drilling platform burned for 2 days. Undoubtedly, you probably remember the video that you would have saw. Over 200 million gallons of oil was released into the Gulf. And it took about 90 days to cap the well so the oil was no longer flowing at the bottom of the ocean. And undoubtedly, you remember some of those photos we saw from the news. And they had the little robot camera down there, and they're pointing out, and it's still just, the oil is just bubbling out of the bottom of the seabed. And we talked earlier about the drilling, what the Deepwater looked like. If you look in the lower right photo now, you'll see that still kind of octagonal shape. You notice the H is gone because it's been burned through. Majority of the surface of the helicopter pad is already gone. The rig itself is fully consumed in fire at this point. And we do want to, and on the next slide, we do want to be thanking everybody that tried so valiantly to save it, to prevent it from capsizing, which unfortunately were not successful, but it just became so self-consuming as a fire, there was just no reasonable way or expectation to be able to do that. So everybody, including myself, looking at some of the processes, the design, how is it possible remotely? How could this have ever happened? Well, we talked to lots of folks, and I went through a series of reports to them. I've had some recommendations, and we shared back and forth with each other. Well, among the people that they brought in some really smart people, smarter than me. They had Dr. Nancy Levinson there. She's with MIT, and she's a system safety subject matter expert, or an SME. And she looked, because they had a whole bunch of procedures, lots and lots of them. And so she would refer to those as standards. It says, you know, they produced a lot of standards. Many weren't that good. Many were irrelevant. A lot of them, we also found, they could not be implemented as written. So the people viewing the broadcast today, because I like to have a lot of fun with stuff, but when I start hearing these, you had procedures that really don't apply to your work, they're irrelevant, or there's procedures that have been issued that could not be implemented the way they are written. Candidly, you're setting your people up for failure. So that should be one of those things. Wow, how did they get there? And so, but the next bullet really gave a lot of clarity to a lot of us. The project was 14 days behind schedule, 58 million over budget. So anybody viewing us today, if you're responsible for a project, or you're president of a company, or you're the CEO or COO, or you're the financial guy, and you're, oh my goodness, you're that far behind schedule, you're that much over budget, and in the background, I got to be candid with a lot of people that were spoken to, this was kind of the underlying theme. How do we get caught up? How do we stop burning budget so we can be successful? And again, this is a synopsis. I have a complete presentation I'll share with you, and we can talk about that towards the end of this today. The final design for Deepwater Horizon required what we call 21 stabilizers. And what they did, the drill casing goes from the platform all the way down to the ocean, bottom of the ocean. They help keep it in place. All the calculations from Halliburton, all the right guys, they needed 21. Well, so they looked at their inventory and their receipt logs. They had 6. Here's what was learned afterwards, is they thought the wrong items had been delivered. It turned out they had all 21 sitting on the drill deck. They simply didn't know it because their receipt inspection processes were just not active. And the last bullet, it's an email from one of the DP drilling engineers. He had the final yes or no to proceed with the 6 versus the 21 centralizers. And his email reads, it's done, end of story, we'll probably be fine. I'm highly confident to this day that drilling engineer, when he hears about this, when he goes back to that email, it haunts him. I'm also highly confident he or she's not a bad individual. They were just trying to make the best with what they had because they knew they're over budget and they knew they're behind schedule. And I tell you, we're going to go to commercial real quick. We got lots more stuff coming and on guaranteed ideas that can help you make sure you're never in a Deepwater Horizon event. We'll be right back.
Safety Culture Strategies provides world-class safety culture and safety program management consultative services for clients throughout the United States. Whether your company is pursuing Voluntary Protection Program STAR designation, ISO 45001 certification, or considering a comprehensive review of your current safety programs and processes, Safety Culture Strategies brings hands-on experience combined with a unique perspective that readily translates from senior management to task-level personnel. This collective skill set provides you with a very insightful health check of your overall safety management system that can also assist with reducing injuries and attrition, as well as increasing profitability. Safety Culture Strategies is also certified to provide Ziegler Institute employee engagement training and leadership coaching. When combined with established relationships with federal and state regulators, Safety Culture Strategies is uniquely positioned to assist the safety culture efforts of any company. For additional information, visit www.scstrat.com or call us at 702-780-1410. After all, every company has a safety culture, but is it the culture you want?
And we're back, and we're talking about how is it possible that this could happen in the Deepwater Horizon problems and this disaster with obviously a very highly effective processes and programs and a great platform. We heard about that, they maybe undoubtedly didn't have the right receipt inspection programs in place. We heard about, well, instead of the 21 centralizers, we're going to go with 6. and there's an engineer with BP back in that day and said, it's in the story, it'll probably be fine. And unfortunately it's not. Now, is everything the result of that? Absolutely positively not. But it was also an indicator of some of the stressors, et cetera, that were on the systems. What else did we learn? Well, they had required mandatory tests for some of their cement to make sure, and it's kind of like when, if you're going to pour a driveway in front of your house, you want to make sure you got the right mixture. They had one of those required as well. They flew the test engineers out from Louisiana, brought them out to the platform. They realized how far they were behind on schedule and they're still having a few problems. They sent the test engineers back home. They left the drilling platform. Those test engineers did not speak to their boss inland before they left the platform. And when they got back to their offices, they didn't tell their boss then. They assumed that he knew the tests had been canceled. And they went back to some of the other projects they were working on. They added a series of last-minute tests, negative pressure, positive pressure, without any formal review or approval cycle. In the world of OSHA under 1910, you have what's called Process Safety Management, or PSM, 1910.119. And in there, they have a very prescriptive, lots of criteria, what's called an MOC, a Management of Change Program. So if you're going to change some of your testing or put in a new piping system, you get the right people together and you look at it and say, okay, have we considered everything to make sure we can do this safely and efficiently and not have leaks of fluids? Pretty good idea, and it's required by OSHA. That did not occur at this time. They also had very unique readings. So I got to keep it down at Mikey level for the detailed analysis of this. Is they had two pipes, one on each side, and the pressure, the PSI, should read the same, the pounds per square inch. Well, they had one of their pipes, it was at 0. Their other pipe was reading 1,000 PSI. Now, these should be within a few PSI of each other. In this case, they probably should be reading about 500. But we had one at 0 and one at 1,000. So these engineers are out on the drilling deck looking at these gauges, attempting to figure out what's going on. And one of the lead drillers, he comes up there and tells me, we're all down there in Argentina. We had that same thing happen about 5 years ago. I just slapped it with a spud wrench, and it just reset itself about 10 minutes. After the explosion, and these engineers, and fortunately the majority of them survived, and they were interviewed, no one, I repeat, no one understood what that driller was talking about, slapping with a spud wrench. But also, none of those same engineers wanted to be the very first one to raise their hand and say, I don't know what he's talking about. They waited for somebody else versus raising their own hand. That's referred to in the world of safety as a halo effect. So a lot of times, unfortunately, if somebody speaks with a lot of authority and a lot of passion, combined with a safety culture that people really don't want to be the first one to say, I don't know what this means, this can occur. And the detailed analysis after the explosion, they brought in PhDs, said his theory of being able to slap it with a spud wrench and reset it was totally impossible. They made a go-ahead decision to proceed with one positive test or a good test, what's called a kill line, which would safely shut everything down. Commonly, you will do a series of them, and not only do you want them to be a positive result, you want to make sure they're all within about that same PSI or pounds per square inch, because that tells you the systems are working the way they should. They had a series of them fail. They finally got one positive, and then they had a few more fail, and they said, we got to get our production going again. So what has happened out of that? Again, this is our synopsis today. This is, if I come into a president's office or with this team, this is kind of what we want to bring. So here we go. End of the year for the Transocean folks. First quarter, calendar year 2011. So they had the board of directors, and like most board of directors, they can be available to have a bonus. And like most bonus criteria, there's different things you have to look at, and one of the things they would have in theirs was overall health and safety performance. The board of directors elected to waive the reduce the safety and health performance, just said, well, we don't have to worry about it. And everybody voted on it, they agreed to it, and they resulted in increased bonus. Large organizations, including BP and Transocean, they're required to do some annual submittals to the SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission. Now, I am not a fan, if you want to bring me back, Rick, I'm not really a fan of reading stuff verbatim. This one, I got to do it. Notwithstanding the tragic loss of life in the Gulf of New Mexico, we achieved an exemplary statistical safety record as measured by our total recordable incident rate and total potential severity rate. As measured by these standards, we recorded the best year in safety performance in our company's history. Now, this is a company that's killed 11 people just a few months before. And the people says, Mike, you got to be making this up. I said, no, this is what they filed to the SEC, and to me, and I do not apologize for my passion on safety and safety culture. To me, this is an indicative of who this company really is. They undoubtedly don't agree with me, but that's what they chose to post. So, hold on, I've got to backpedal here. There we go. So, how's it been going since then? Well, let's find out, boys and girls. Well, in calendar year 2015, BP, British Petroleum, they settled the balance of their state, federal, local civil claims, almost $21 billion, that's with a B. And in September of 2018, BP issued an update on what the overall estimate is for all of this. Over $63 billion. Big B. What's going on right now? Everything I'm learning and hearing, they have a new management team now in place. They're really focusing their assets to make sure that they can be performing some of this work and analysis properly. And the one that's got me encouraged is they're now really focused on enhanced employee involvement. So what can any company learn from this disaster? You know, I talked to an organization, he goes, Mike, we don't have a drilling platform. We're not in the middle of the ocean. We're hanging down here in Florida, and I've got a little small company. Well, here's what I think anybody can be learning. It reinforces the importance of effectively maintaining processes developed to implement your safety management programs. All we're talking about, once you get a great program in place, give it a little routine care and feeding, right? So it doesn't inadvertently no longer get emphasized. Make sure you have a formal review cycle when you're going to change how you do work. Where it's just how you're bringing in your trucks to pick up gravel, or maybe you're doing a whole new piping system, or you're changing part of your electrical grid. Have a formal process. Your third bullet, and you've heard it with some of my other featured guests I've been so honored to have on the show, the importance of task level people being involved in work planning. And when we say task level, they're the people that carry the tools. They're out there every day. I guarantee you, they know the best how to do the job. And when you get them involved, everybody wins, because now they know management's listening to them. You're going to find efficiencies, better way to achieve all the performance goals for the company. Make sure you have a version of plan of the day, plan of the week. The plan of the day might be 2 or 3 minutes. Hey guys and gals, this is what we're working on today. Is there anything else we need to think about or we haven't talked about? The plan of the week, usually on a Monday, or you'll have it on a Friday. Okay, here's what's coming up this week or the next week, the bigger projects. And then they're augmented by the plan of the day. And if something new comes in midweek, well, let's get the right people together and talk about it. And the need for routine engagement by the management team with the project and the task level people, what we call boots on the ground. Get out of your office, go say hi to them. And just the first couple times may not work well because, they haven't seen you before. But spend some time, get to know them. You're going to have a better organization, and candidly, you're going to have a lot more confidence in your team because you're getting to know them as individuals. And have a culture whereby all your company personnel, they feel empowered and obligated. I emphasize obligated. They now have a responsibility to recognize that they have to raise their hand. They have to question something that's not clear, or they don't understand the work they've been assigned to that day. And again, a lot of this is not big stuff, but it gets kind of lost sometimes. Some final thoughts for you. The Deepwater horizon, the associated fatalities, injuries, environmental insults was totally preventable. It's kind of scary. I've done a lot of accident investigations. Sometimes you can't draw that bright line in the sand. This one we can. It was totally preventable. Personal, and by the way, people throughout your company, they take on the persona regarding culture of that by the organization. Unspoken expectations. By way of example, if you have a requirement to go in your building, anybody goes in, they got to wear a hard hat, you're the president. So I'm going to be in there 5 minutes, I'm not going to worry about it. So you walk through the building where the signs say everybody wears a hard hat and you don't have one on. One of your managers, somebody gets injured, they turn to everybody else and say, okay, yeah, Mike's got to go to the hospital, so we got to work harder so we can make our quota today. Because it's important to make quota so I can get my bonus. The message you're conveying is production above everything else. And a lot of times when I talk to senior management, he goes, Mike, that wasn't our intent. That's, well, good. Unfortunately, this is how it can be conveyed. Public perception, especially now in the world of social media, can prove detrimental to the long-term morale of any company. You might remember there was a big sailing competition near the Isle of Man, and Tony Hayward, who was the prior CEO of BP, right, prior, and right after testifying to Congress, he's out sailing in his big ship, and it's leaned over, big, beautiful boat, lots of crew. And he talks to the media, and these are quotes, and he says, "No one wants this over more than I do. I would like my life back." Well, the members of the family who lost someone on Deepwater Horizon, or had somebody permanently disabled from Deepwater Horizon, they said, you know, we would like our lives back too. Long-term effectiveness of any safety management system is directly contingent on management commitment combined with employee support. I want to thank everybody for being with us today. This includes its executive synopsis of the Deepwater Horizon disaster. To receive a complete copy of my complete presentation, just send me a request via my website, www.scstrat.com. Send us any ideas you have for different thoughts, featured guests, questions, different topics you'd like to see touched upon, and we'll fit them in there. And you can also send those to scstrat.com. Until next time, wishing you all the best on your safety culture journey. God bless.